Karl Bainbridge and welcome back to INC Live. This is my recap of Michael Chiesa versus Neil Magny. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who tuned in to watch the Holloway versus Cater breakdown. Got to bear in mind a lot of this is going to be a work in progress, so we're going to be trying different things. Any sort of feedback in terms of my performance would be greatly appreciated. I know about the camera, I know about the microphone. Trust me, I am trying my absolute best to get both of those fixed up. I wanted to try and do this straight after the show, but by the time it finished, it was just so late here in the UK. I didn't have the opportunity to do so. And then, of course, 9 to 5 job, had to work around that. So I'm finally getting this out. Wanted to try and do it just before the McGregor versus Poirier card. With that being said, let's get to the fights. Okay, so we need to break things down with our main event. Michael Chiesa looking dominant up against Neil Magny. It was 49-46 across all of the judges' scorecards. And I personally picked Chiesa to win this fight. I just thought that he was the much bigger welterweight between the two. Neil Magny's a big lad himself, but Chiesa, how this lad got down to 155, I never know. He looked absolutely massive in there. And I thought he had the grappling advantage. The question was always going to be, how would his conditioning hold? Because we know Neil Magny has cardio for days. But Chiesa, for the 25 minutes he was in there, I think looked pretty solid. Yes, he did tire compared to Magny, but that's a given considering how good Neil is. But there was something that Bilal Muhammad said on one of those tweets. Even though Chiesa did look slightly tired in that 4th and 5th round, he just enters a flow state once he gets a fighter to the ground. And that's exactly what happened. Magny did have a good round in the 3rd. I think he deserved to win that. But once the fight hit the mat, Chiesa was just in his element. I did see a lot of people out there criticising the fight for being boring. I can understand where they're coming from, but I see more positives in Michael Chiesa as a grappler than, say, a Jared Rosholt or a Kamaru Usman. He's not one of those sort of lay and pray types. He's trying to make things happen. And personally, I still got enjoyment from seeing his performance. I said when Chiesa moved up to welterweight, I think he fought Carlos Condit. That was his first fight there. And I did think to myself, this is a move he should have made years ago. This is his absolute ideal weight class. And he's shown it with 4 very good performances in a row. Now, a lot of people could have said, yeah, Diego Sanchez is short, Carlos Condit ain't what he was, RDA was undersized. You can't fault dominating Neil Magny with that kind of performance. It was a very good showcase from Chiesa, and I think he deserves all the credit in the world. I do have doubts over the Colby call-out though, and I say this for 2 reasons. One, I think Colby is in that sort of elite band of welterweights who's only going to settle for the bigger fights now. And I think certainly he's going to want to fight Masvidal, given the potential payday, with Jorge being such a big star, but also as well there's a lot of beef between the two. So you could put that as the co-main of a big UFC pay-per-view, even do what I think they're going to do, which is have them two against one another on Ultimate Fighter. So I don't see that fight happening realistically, and even if it did, I don't see that being a good fight for Chiesa, because I think Colby has the conditioning. His striking isn't powerful, but it is effective. This sort of pitter-patter, grind you down just through the sheer amount of volume. So I think Chiesa's going to have a problem with that, because even though his striking was better, it's still the biggest flaw in his arsenal. The fight I'd most like to see is Wonderboy, because we've seen Wonderboy is still an elite level striker in the welterweight division. He's probably the best striker in the top 5 in my opinion. And I would be interested to see how Chiesa handles that. So you have that great striker versus grappler matchup. I know that's a bit cliched for MMA, but I'd be interested to see that. And I think it's the most realistic fight that Chiesa has a chance of winning. I don't see him beating Leon. I don't see him beating Masvidal, Colby, so forth. But Chiesa does deserve that big fight given his winning streak and given how good he's been in this winning streak. Neil Magny, I'm afraid, he's going to go back to being what a lot of people thought he was, which was this sort of welterweight gatekeeper, the guy you need to beat just on the inside of the top 10 before you can prove yourself as a worthy title challenging competitor. Decent enough fight. I think it was worthy of being the main event, but it wasn't the best fight on the card. Moving on to the rest of the card though, and I think the best place we need to start is one of the prelim fights. Now, Dana White does these videos. If you don't know, now you know. And the fight he picked out of all of them was Mason Jones up against Mike Davis. what a fight that was. You had two guys who, Mason Jones obviously came in undefeated. Mike Davis, he had that dominant win over Thomas Gifford. Spent a long time out. He had a combination of injuries. COVID obviously played its part. He looked great in there as well. These guys were just full on swinging at one another. It was end to end momentum shifts. I personally thought that Davis had the better when it came to the grappling advantage, but Jones was just willing to throw himself in the deep end and make it as dirty and as aggressive as he could. I think the right call was made though. I think Davis just squeaked it out. This is a fight for me, and of course we've got the rest of the year. We've got another 11 and a half months of fighting to go. That could very realistically be a fight of the year contender. It's definitely in the early running. But bearing in mind the two fighters involved, they're not really the biggest names, considering it was the prelims of a Wednesday show. I think it's going to be one of those fights which a lot of the hardcore fans are going to speak very highly of. But when it comes to the end of year reasoning, the bigger fights, the higher profile main events, the title fights, etc., are going to take priority. It reminds me a lot actually of, there was a fight last year between Gamrot and Guram, the big Georgian lad. I can't remember his last name, I'm afraid. And that was another really competitive, entertaining fight where, even though I was quite high on Gamrot and even though he lost that fight, it was a performance which showed that both fighters had upsides and are worthy of being in the reckoning in a couple of years' time. This is what this fight could be, and I hope that Mason Jones can bounce back from this. Obviously, being a Brit, I need to support me Brits. Really entertaining matchup and worthy of the fight of the fight of the night reward. On the whole, though, it was a bit of a mixed result for the Brits. Obviously, Jones lost his fight. Tom Breeze, that was another end-to-end one up against Omari Akhmedov. There were times that Tom Breeze could have very easily finished that fight, and I certainly didn't expect Tom Breeze to have the whereabouts to go for the calf slicers and the guillotines, etc. British grappling has got a lot better in recent years, and I think that was another sign of it. But Akhmedov, he ground out through it, and he ended up getting the sub. I know there's a bit of criticism from the commentary team over Lucas Pozarski not calling that fight immediately. I think he did an okay job, but that's just my own personal opinion, and there's a lot of people on Twitter who feel the same way. The real high point for the Brits was Lerone Murphy, who he showed again why there's a lot of people so high on him. It wasn't a perfect performance. He was tested at times by Douglas Silva, but I think that's exactly what you need with that kind of matchmaking. Lerone was able to show all those qualities that has people so high on him, but Douglas Silva was causing him problems. I really do enjoy watching Douglas Silva fight. He's sort of like he doesn't have the power and the aggression of a John Lineker, but he's still got that head down brawling style. The Brazilians are fantastic for that. It also helps that he also had the Vitor Belfort sort of mohawk mullet thing going on there, which I do love in that regard. Funny enough fight, there was a lot of entertaining fights. I wouldn't call it like a superstar must-watch show, but there were enough fights on there and enough performances. Vicky Simone, I think, did very well. Manon Filio, I hope I pronounced that right. She looked fantastic in the opening fight of the card. And Victoria Leonardo, maybe not the best fighter in the world, but I think in a division like women's flyweight, where you have such a gulf between Shevchenko and the rest of the field, anybody who puts in that level of performance on their debut is somebody you just need to keep a sneaky eye on. But at the same time, we thought that about Agapova, and we also what happened when she fought Shana Dobson. So just a word of warning, but what I saw based on that first fight, impressive performance from her. On the whole, very strong show. Would I have gone out of my way to make it a Wednesday card? I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure there's limitations in terms of the dates when you have to do all these Fight Island events. Because I believe they go back to the Apex after Poirier versus McGregor. But again, enjoyable show, good performances. I think Davis and Jones especially was fantastic and a must-watch for anybody on Fight Pass. A great performance from Michael Chiesa. He definitely deserves that top 5 fight. So that's my view of everything that's been happening over on Fight Island on the Wednesday card. I want to say a big thank you to anyone who's been supporting the channel so far. I promise to do another video like this on Sunday morning, when of course Conor McGregor will take on Dustin Poirier. We'll see if Conor is able to get himself another victory, whether Dustin gets the biggest win of his career, what's going to happen to the lightweight division, and review the rest of the card. This has been the INC. I've been Karl Bainbridge. Thank you for watching.